Ladies and gentlemen, we have our next session is on a very important topic, which is upskilling and reskilling students to make them competitive for future workforce. Our eminent panelists are Dr. Jitendra Mishra, Director, Jaipuria School of Business, Ghaziabad. Sir, kindly come on the stage. Thank you. Dr. Jamshed Bharucha sir is already there on the stage. Thank you. Professor Dr. A.K. Bakshi, Vice Chancellor, PDM University, Bahadurgarh. Kindly come, sir. Thanks, sir. And Mr. Sunil Sood, Chief Business Officer, Executive Education, Times Professional Learning. So please. Thank you. So I would request Dr. Jitendra Mishra to please take on the session.
Thank you. So good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. We are happy to start the session, though our time has already expired. And I'm sure that you must have butterflies in your stomach because lunchtime you might be smelling the food. But let me assure you that we are going to have something worthy and you will not regret being with the panel for next 35-40 minutes. I welcome the panel on the board for the discussion on such a pertinent topic, which is much talked about, and it is upskilling and reskilling students to make them competitive for the future workforce. If you see, the future workforce we are imagining, and it's not that very clear that how the future work and workplace is going to shape. There are studies which says that maybe 70 to 80% of the things which are going to happen in next 10 years are not known to anybody. So we have got such an uncertainty. And we have to prepare a workforce out of our education system for such a kind of work and workplace. And obviously, when it comes to doing something, you need to have the requisite skill. We had a very conventional education system. In India, it has prolonged, but it's true for the globe, where there was a divide. We say that education has to make the people know, and it is the workplace where the training has to happen to do the things. And since the pace of growth and pace of change was so slow, it was working well. So after passing from the academic campuses, the students go to organization where they were trained for the requisite tasks, and while working on their given role, they used to learn how to do the things. And gradually, the transformation happened, and at the very late stage, the behavioral change happened, while the very basic purpose of education is to bring transformation in the behavior of the people. And the journey from knowing to being has to be much faster and much shorter. Here, we are going to take little time and try to understand how academic institutions can make this journey shorter and travel much faster to make the student move from knowing to being in a more designed and structured way. And in this very course, I'm going to request my panel members to unfold the various aspects of this entire journey and make us all understand together that what is the context and how are we going to take it forward in near future. So the format would be, I would request each of my panel members to have an opening remark, and then we will have few questions by which we'll try to build. And at the end, we'll keep some time for questions from the audience, because that would be the real collaboration, and we all will have some takeaway which will be created by a collaborative process. I think it's fine. We are all fine with this. Is that okay? So I'll start with Mr. Bharucha to request him to start with his opening remarks, please.
Thank you, sir. It's a pleasure being on this panel with you. And this is an extremely important topic. I'm going to bring a particular angle to this topic. That is based on my own field of research, which is cognitive neuroscience, how the brain works, how the mind works. At the university that I have joined to launch it in Chennai Sai University, we are designing our pedagogy based on research on how the brain learns. And much of what we do in education at all levels is really not is not compatible with how the brain learns. For example, what we know now from research is the vast majority of the knowledge you gain, say as an undergraduate, let's talk about that period now, is forgotten. It's forgotten when you need it. So we have these students mugging and mugging and mugging for exams, and they may get good marks, 90, 95, 99. If you give them the same exam a year later, they're going to do very, very badly. And certainly if you give them that exam later in their careers, they're going to fail. How many of you would like to take an exam that you did well when you were an undergraduate? So that is a massive wasted effort. What we do know, however, is all the knowledge that you have demonstrated mastery of at one point in time, when you took an exam and you did well, is still in the brain. It's just not easily accessible when you need it. Now, I'm not talking about students who go on to get PhD in that field and go on to become professors in that field because they're keeping up with the field. But the vast majority of our graduates today, including in engineering, do not practice the field in which they majored as undergraduates. Okay, mechanical engineers, very few of them become mechanical engineers or stay that way. And so the question is, what is the residue of the education that you want to manifest professionally? It's not the vast amount, it's not the 160 credits that you accumulated getting a BTech. Okay? There was a time when if a student did a BTech in chemical engineering, that's because they went into the chemical engineering industry. Or if they did electronic engineering, they went into the electronic industry and they practiced. But those days are over. Vast majority of BTech students do not stay in engineering. They go into management or they do other things. So what is it that we really want education to be all about? And it is skills. Now, skills means different things to different people. I use the word as it's used in my field, cognitive neuroscience. Skills are the ability to do things. In this case, they're cognitive skills. The ability to analyze problems, to grasp complex issues, to probe complexity, to frame problems, not just answer textbook problems that we get in our board exams, but to frame new problems and to try to solve unsolved problems, which in the real world are very messy problems that require pulling information together from various sources. So I call those fundamental cognitive skills. Now, much is made of the need for critical thinking and communication, and I'm absolutely delighted to see that those have reached the forefront of discussion because those are two of the most fundamental cognitive skills. You may be trained as a mechanical engineer, but someday you'll be working on a project that it requires you to think in other domains. And if you have developed that ability to think critically and the confidence and to communicate it to people in very analytic, complex, nuanced ways, then you will be in demand for in almost any industry. So when I think of upskilling and reskilling, I think of getting students, while they're doing their education, to be given problems that they have not seen before, to be introduced to complex issues that they have not studied before, and work with the students under the guidance of a professor to start to understand these things on their own rather than having a professor up there write it on the board and test them in an exam. It's by doing it's that the students actually learn and get into the practice of that. And by doing in different subject domains is when they get into the habit of evincing those cognitive skills in the actual workforce.
Thank you very much, Professor Bharucha. You very aptly narrated that how the brain learns and how does the lot of effort put on mugging up and storing information doesn't work when it is needed, and also elaborating the cognitive skills and how can they be developed. So thank you very much. Professor Vaksi, I will request you to elaborate on how can we develop the requisite skills among the students so that they become ready for employment in their requisite fields.
Thank you very much for giving me this opportunity to share some of my thoughts. You know, if you look at the theme of this panel discussion, ultimate aim is to improve the employability of our students, to enhance their competence. Now the question comes, what determines the competence? See, competence is determined by three factors. One is the knowledge, second is the skills, and the third is the attitude or abilities. So these three things taken together determine the competence. If we look at knowledge, we need to have the best possible knowledge, latest developments in the subject. That is now very easy because in this digital age, we have multiple sources of knowledge. Earlier, knowledge used to come mainly from the teachers, but now you have so much. During Corona pandemic, we have seen MOOCs, e-learning, and so many other platforms from where one can get knowledge. So knowledge can be taken care of, there is no doubt. Now the second point is skills. Skill is something which is the need of the hour. You know, it is said that in the 21st century, if you want to excel, you need two things. One is, of course, the domain knowledge, and second is the 21st century skills. You know, 21st century skills are a set of abilities that our students must possess in order to become competitive in this modern age, digital age, information age. And what are these 21st century skills? You know, 21st century skills are normally divided in three categories. One is the learning skills, where we have 4 C's. 4 C's means collaboration, communication, creativity, and critical thinking. All these need to be imbibed in our students. This is the need of the hour. Second is, you know, literacy skills. You need to have information literacy, you need to have media literacy, you need to have technology literacy. All the three skills are very important. And others, and the last category is the life skills. You need to be flexible, leadership quality, initiative, all those things come under life skills. So, you know, these are going to be big challenges because our teachers are equipped to give knowledge, but our teachers are not equipped to teach skills. Skill, as it has been pointed out, is the ability to do well because of training or experience or practice. It takes a lot of time. I may know the meaning of creativity. It does not mean that I become creative. No. It has to be over a period of time. So that is what I mean is that these skills or these habits need to be inculcated in our students from childhood. You cannot become creative overnight. You have to encourage curiosity amongst the students. Only then, over a period of time, they will become creative. So that is what I really want to say is that we need to have courses on these skills right from childhood. Only then they will become different, unique people. You know, there is a NASA report which says that 98% of the children who enter kindergarten, 98%, they think different. But once they go through the education system and at the age of 25, when they come out, 98% think alike. So we are curbing their inquisitiveness. We are curbing their, independent thinking. We are giving ready-made answers to the questions so that they lose the capability to think on their own. I think that's a big damage we are doing to our students. And in the 21st century, this is not what is required. This is going to be an age where three big challenges will have to be faced by our students. One challenge is that this is going to be an age of uncertainty. We do not know in which jobs our present-day students will be employed. Maybe those jobs still do not exist. So you are living in an age of uncertainty. So you have to be prepared for that. Second is, this is an age of disruptive technology like artificial intelligence. This is an age where artificial intelligence will be equal to the intelligence of the students by the time they come out. If we can have machines with the same intelligence as you, then why do we need you? We can work with machines. So this is going to be another challenge for your employment. And the third challenge is massification in higher education. Everywhere, a lot of efforts are being made to enhance gross enrollment ratio. So in future, the position will be something like this. There will be very few jobs, but many takers. So in such a scenario, if you have to survive, if you have to get employment, or if you have to become an entrepreneur, you create your own jobs, then these 21st century skills are going to be very, very important. They will be the deciding factor, because you cannot have a machine with creativity. You cannot have a machine with critical thinking. You can't have a machine with leadership quality. So here, humans can outsmart others. So that is what we need to incorporate in our education system. This is what I would like to say in the initial stages. Maybe later on I will add more. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Professor Bakshi, for very elaborately pointing out the 21st century skills and also giving a hope that despite machines are going to learn faster, or the students' intelligence could be matchable with the artificial intelligence if they don't improve what they are required to improve upon. But machines have limitation on being creative, critical, and having leadership. So that way, the importance of humans and jobs for humans are going to be reserved. We need to rise up to the occasion to encash that and leverage that. Mr. Sood, I will request you to further build on it. How can we develop these 21st century skills among the students so that they don't only become employable for the present, but they also remain employable for the future jobs?
Sure. Thank you. Thank you for having me on the panel. So this needs to be broken down into two parts. There is skilling, which is an initial need, and there is, or upskilling, and there is reskilling, which is a mid-career need. that needs to be focused upon. A lot of what we are seeing today, right, and I'll just talk about the first phase right now, is that any employer today is talking about lack of, availability of candidates. Most universities today are talking about lack of placement opportunities. As high as 92%, and this is a Niti Aayog survey, 92% graduates are not employable, right? So, and I'm just taking a leaf out of, Professor Rajiv Kumar's remarks. He made a very good remark saying, good marks, but not employable, right? We're talking about a large chunk of people who want jobs and they are there, but they can't take it up. That's the challenge that we are seeing today. It's going to be an eternal need of, or an eternal question of where to begin change from. We can begin at it, from kindergarten. However, today, the kind of influx of FDI, the kind of influx of opportunity that India is seeing, especially in the technology space, creates a large opportunity for India to supply, right? And we are today the outsourcing hub of the world. We are that today because of what happened, probably 1.5 decades back, wherein skills were developed, we got there ahead of time. Today, probably the graduate system, right, needs to embed skill development. A person who's undergoing 3 years of training, if he yet comes out and says that, okay, I yet have a challenge in getting a job, there's a big challenge or it's a big question on the system of education that we have. Secondly, it's not that it is universal. This problem is not a universal phenomena. A lot of private universities, given the autonomy that they have today, have changed. They've partnered with industry, they've partnered with SMEs, they've even partnered with international universities. That gives them the opportunity of getting there ahead of time. About 800 odd private universities exist in our space, give and take a little. 200 of them, for example, have migrated. And now we are seeing a clear distinction of universities that are creating employable pool of individuals vis-a-vis universities creating an educated pool of individuals. That's, the first skilling part. Upskilling today, and I just tried to pull out a few statistics. NASSCOM and Niti Aayog published that every 3 to 5 years, there are 2 core domains, IT, ITS, and BFSI, that will have redundancy of skill to the level of 55 to 70%. That's a scary ratio. For a country that has, possibly these 2 sectors contributing to the top 5 employment arenas. Now, in that aspect, be it a university or an IIM, we partnered with various IIMs and IITs, there's a tremendous opportunity to upskill people. Anybody who has 3, 5, 8 years of experience, needs to go back to the formal system of education. The absorption of MOOCs, the creation of MOOCs, the adaptation of MOOCs, the IPRs that go along with it, there's a lot of work to be done, both on the side of the government, adaptation on the side of universities, acceptance on the side of the students and the employers alike. However, if we move ahead over there, I think there's a tremendous potential that the country holds. Another, additional statistic that I pulled out is that we are creating about 2.3 million entry-level jobs by 2030. And 2030 is knocking on the door because these people have to come out of the education system. Now, these jobs will come to India only if we are equipped today. Not if, they're not going to knock on our door. It's a global economy. It'll move to another country or maybe a more skilled country. So the fight for talent is real today. The fight for talent is going to get even more fierce for companies down the line. It is not about only universities or, the employer and how they respond. It is about a country and how we respond to the skill gap. It's a larger challenge that we are seeing out here. Thank you.
So thank you very much for bringing out some good and some bad aspects. Bad aspect is that 92% of our students passing out from college are not employable, which needs to be looked into a little deeper because there is a lot of generalization in it. Because if you look at the ground, employment is there of different kind. If you see an engineer not doing exactly the engineering job of that stature, but he's doing some job. So those gaps are there. And obviously, as we discussed, that there is a transition because there was a deep belief that the job of academic institution is to educate the student. They are not responsible or accountable whether the student is employable or not. That is his job to become employable, and that's an industry headache. That mindset is changing. Another aspect that you brought, that a lot of jobs are going to be obsolete, especially in BFSI and ITS, that's correct, because the rate of disruption is known to us all. There are no secrets. Even the report of IMF says that by 2025, 85 million jobs are going to be displaced, not abolished, they are going to be displaced. So the skill requirement for those jobs are going to be changed. Second part is, so globally if you see, there is a transition. It is not that jobs are going to cease. The jobs are going to be there, but not for the same skills which they happens to be. Secondly, India is in a very different spot as compared to most of the Western countries, where the development is going to take a different trajectory now onwards. The 2020 onwards is going to be on a different trajectory. Already there are there is an ambition of becoming a 5 trillion economy, and which is not impossible if all the things are put to the action and they work right. So these are the new directions where a lot of projects are going to start, and we ourselves in the country are going to have requirement of talent in a large amount. Thirdly, if you see at a global level, India is one which has got largest pool of talent. So if you see the global talent space, Indians are going to fill that because they are the one who are there to drive the work requirements across the globe. So if you look at the opportunity, there is tremendous opportunity at present, and it's going to grow. But it's not for free. We need to become eligible. We need to be credible, where the people will trust our talent, and they will put their trust and give us the responsibility to drive it. And in this course, how can the student empowerment help us leverage this opportunity which is already existing and emerging? How can we try to leverage it by empowering students and making it more collaborative process, where students do take the accountability of learning and becoming employable? What can be the way forward? Mr. Bharucha, I would request you to take it forward.
Thank you. I really like the way you use the term empowerment of students, because I think that is absolutely critical, and it has not been talked about as much in the last few years in India as I think it should be. Once again, I come at this from my own professional background. The brain has evolved over hundreds of millions of years to explore its environment and to learn that way. And from the moment a baby is born, it's exploring its environment physically, but also verbally, and it is registering how the environment responds, whether it's the people around responding with language, responding emotionally, or it's the physical world responding. Unfortunately, our education system is designed almost exclusively towards learning in a passive way. We designed what the students should know, what they should learn, how they should learn it, how they should be assessed, when they should be assessed. And parents and teachers spend so much of their time saying, be quiet, do this, concentrate, pay attention. This is not the time to do that, so on and so forth, saying no. A lot of that is unfortunately dampening the child's motivation and inquisitiveness. Now, some of that is needed, of course. You need some structure. I'm not saying do away with structure. But in my conclusion from all of the evidence is that an education system at any level, from preschool to university level, should be founded on this basic arrangement where you encourage the individual's innate inquisitiveness, motivation, passion, all of these things, and you provide the stimulating environment that will inspire the student to continue that exploration, and you provide the feedback in the environment, the people who can enable the child to be the best version of himself or herself. We should not try to force every kid into these templates and these boxes. Now, unfortunately, it's very difficult to undo all of that because we still have things like, what are you going to become? That's a box, okay? Are you going to become a civil engineer? Are you going to become a lawyer? But I think the world of work is going to explode beyond those boundaries. And I think we should empower our kids at all levels, and we should listen to them when they express interests or passions or when they ask questions. When I had, my wife and I had my son, I vowed I would never be the kind of parent who, when he goes through the phase of saying, but why? And then you give an answer, no, but why? And then, but why, but why, but why? Most parents get frustrated and they say, just be quiet, okay? Sit in the corner, do something else, okay? I vowed I would never do that, and I'm proud actually that I never did that. As a result, he's got an incredibly probing mind, the kind of mind that you want, critical thinking mind. We want our students at all levels to challenge us, the adults, the grown-ups, the teachers. Teach them to do it respectfully, of course, but to challenge orthodoxy and not just say, I'm saying this, you have to listen because of who I am. So I'm delighted to hear you talk about empowerment, whether you intended it in this way or not, but that's my view of it.
Thank you very much, and very nicely you brought that it's the system that try to curb the inquisitiveness, and if we have to keep the learning alive among the kids, among the students, we have to create a stimulus and stop dictating what's right and wrong, and also not giving them boxes to fit in or choose. And that way you try to address another point that Professor Bakshi brought, that when the student enter the education, 90% thinks differently, and when they pass out, 90% think same way. So I think that that's the system that makes the creativity, that curbs the creativity, and if we have to retain it, making or giving them flexibility, space, having some guiding structure, not the fixed structure, would work. Professor Bakshi, I would request you that how can we try to take this challenge of being dictated, structured, rigid learning, where again skills are becoming a burdening one. Somebody has a natural instinct in terms of his thought process, his personality alignment, and there he can be more skilled. For example, somebody can have a better cricketing skill than becoming a better footballer or something. So how can we use this empowerment of a student to nurture their inherent talent, skilling them in the right area, and making them better version of themselves, as Professor Bharucha brought?
I think that's a very relevant question which you have put. You know, when we talk about upskilling and reskilling of the students, but who will do that? Students come to an institution, school or college or university. It is basically the education system and mainly the teacher who is supposed to do all that. But then the question comes, are our teachers well equipped to reskill or upskill our students? They themselves may not be skilled. How will they do that? You know, I personally feel how will you do that? If you look at the teachers in the education system, there are about 15 lakh teachers in higher education. I don't know how many of them are, competent enough to train the students on skilling platform. No, not at all. So there is the serious drawback. We at micro level, if we have to be successful in upskilling and reskilling our students, we need to train first of all our teachers for that. Because our teachers themselves have been the product of the old system. The system which focused on rote learning and scoring high marks. Our present day system needs to focus on encouraging thinking, innovation, and creativity amongst our students. How will you do that? So, under these circumstances, the best way is to follow the best practices of other countries, how they are doing it. That is one ray of hope for us. How many countries, how different countries achieve the skilling and reskilling of their students. We need to think on that. You know, every country is ultimately spending a lot of time on the professional development of the teachers. So without doing that, we will not be able to achieve much. And once we encourage thinking, innovation, and creativity in our students from childhood, it will become their habit to think out of the box. They will always come out with new ideas. They always will come out with the innovative solution to the various problems. That is what is the need of the hour. For example, take one example. In 21st century skills, one skill is communication skill. I may know the meaning of communication skill, but I may not be competent enough to teach communication skills to my students. So teachers need to be trained for that. Teachers need to train students for collaboration, for critical thinking, for creativity. As I said earlier in my earlier talk, the biggest problem India is facing today is that there is a crisis of creativity in Indian education system. We never encourage. So that is, you may always say that, okay, there are some people who are doing very well. No doubt there are some peaks of excellence here and there. But whether those peaks of excellence are because of the system or in spite of the system, that's a big question mark. So what I really mean to say is, all these skills which I have already elaborated upon need to be first of all told to the teachers how to teach them. And then from school level onwards, it should be started. You can't do it in one semester or 1 year course. No, nothing will be achieved. Right from the childhood, as I said, we still talk of A for apple. We never ask the question, name all the words which begin with A. That will make them think something. So that is the habit which we need to do that. We have to change our mindset. You know, it's the mindset which separates the best from the rest. We have to have the right type of mindset. We need to train our teachers. We need to work on their professional development. For example, we have a center of the Ministry of Education of the Government of India. I am heading that center and my colleagues are there. During this corona pandemic, when almost all educational institutions were closed, we really ensured that the learning of our students doesn't get interrupted. And we trained our teachers for that. We have trained almost more than 60 to 65,000 teachers during the last 1.5 years through the various training programs. So that is something which is required to be done. We have to be very realistic. We can't just talk in air. At implementation stage, we have to work how we will do that. In new education policy, we say we need to shift our focus from rote learning to all these qualities. But how will we do that? We need to work on that. And new education policy very clearly mentions that in India we need to foster research culture in India. Research culture in India is missing. When we say that the research culture is missing, why research culture is missing? Because we are not having ideas. Research needs so many things, but the basic thing for good research is an idea. If you don't have the idea, what will the funds and what will the equipment and what will the other things do? So all this comes over, that is the reason why none of our educational institutions come in the top institutions of the world. It's primarily because of our research program. And our poor research program is primarily because of our educational system. And our educational system is serious drawback, as I said. We still focus on marks and marks and marks. A student's mark sheet has become a prestige sheet for the family, but a pressure sheet for the student. Very unfortunate. That is why, nothing has changed much. We talk, but when the question comes of implementation, we are not successful. That's my feeling.
That's very nice that you brought that. It is the empowerment of teacher first if we have to change the system. And what Bharucha sir brought in that we need to change the system, create the flexibility and help the student choose the various ways. You added to that you need to change the teachers so that the entire ecosystem become promoting learning by self, exploring, inquiring, and that way when the students start learning on their own, they start learning by doing, their skills will inculcate. You also brought one important point that it should start early, at the early age, right from schools, rather than waiting for very late in the institution.
If I may say, just 1 minute. If you look at many leading countries and the universities of the world, they hardly focus on lecture-based learning. They focus on problem-based learning, case studies. You do all these things. We still focus on lecture-based learning. Oh, teacher is delivering all the lectures, so that is the quality of it. No. We have to change the focus. As you very rightly said, learning by doing.
Yeah.
We have to learn that.
So that's nice. As we are running short of time and we'll keep our promise to take questions from students, I will request Mr. Sood to further take on all that has happened. How can we expedite skill building on academic campuses? Government has brought in a lot of scheme. If you see, there is a separate skill development ministry, and it has got a host of schemes, and it is doing very well. That is for different set of people. How can we make this job easier for everybody by doing it right on the campuses, academic campuses?
Sure. I think there is a tremendous opportunity for everybody to take responsibility here, right? Because primarily when we have this discussion, and these are, I really like Professor Bakshi's statement that we have a lot of macro discussions, but we do not have micro actions, right? There is an opportunity for every university to collaborate. There is an opportunity for public-private partnership today. There is an opportunity for corporate partnerships today. There is a huge opportunity out there wherein there are large employers, willing to train, willing to contribute industry content. Before we train the teachers, and that is a long haul, which is necessary, absolutely necessary. But the short haul is that the industry today is willing to lend people to train, right? And this industry is going to absorb these students. Why not let the industry into your curriculum? The 3 years that the student is with us, why not give him an opportunity to try his hand at 6 skills over a period of 3 years, right? They could come from the industry. Maybe they develop, a niche, or they develop an understanding, a liking for one particular skill. That's how we will create different thinkers in the course of education. That will make them better performers in their job. And, to one of the points about, being unemployable, right? I think the country has a bigger problem than unemployable. It is underemployed.
Yes.
Right? Because this, if addressed, if a person today is, during his graduation, during his, maybe his 10th or 12th, given the option of learning 4, 5, 6 skills, and at every level today, industry is open. At the retail level, they are ready to come at, grade 12. at even the technology level, the AI, ML, data sciences level, they're ready to come during the graduation phase. Engineers today have an option of 4 years. You know, why not embed 6 months of industry into it? It's a wonderful proposition that's out there. And like, you know, I said earlier, there are, you know, boards that are allowing it. There are autonomous universities that are doing it. And this is changing, you know, the way we think. And it's happening across state boards. It's happening across, you know, even the educational boards in school today. And, you know, the IB is one of such creations that has come about, wherein a student today is going out and exploring. So what was not allowed under a certain system, you know, the market and the user has forced it to change. And this change is, you know, only going to get more disruptive over the next 10 years. That's all.
That's wonderful. We had a nice discussion. Before we conclude, as per our promise, we can take one quick question. We are running short of time, so any one question if anybody is ready with that. Okay, that's great. That will help us not to breeze the time. If we conclude this discussion, we have come across an understanding that skill gap is a reality. We need to enhance skills, both by developing the requisite skill, reskilling, and upskilling. Because lot of things are changing in this digital disruption age, and therefore the learning is going to be lifelong process. It is not going to be one spot learning for rest of the life, but it is going to be a continuous learning for all along the life. And therefore, we need to create the system which is more flexible. We need to bring in the methods which try to empower the students, and to support that, we need to empower faculty. We need to create the system which create a stimulus for students and prompt them to choose their interests and learn in their own way. This skill is going to be one critical area, and it may be a differentiator when it comes to the value of the talent in the country or on the global map. So we are very grateful to ILITS and the panel for helping us all understand collectively the very pertinent topic of skilling and reskilling and upskilling for better workforce. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Thank you, everybody.
So a truly informative session on a very valid topic. I thank, I thank all my, our eminent speakers for the same. Now I would like to invite Dr. Ravi Gupta, founder and CEO of ILITS Technomedia, to please give the token of appreciation to all our eminent panelists. So, Dr. Jamshed Bharucha. Dr. Jitendra Mishra. Professor Dr. A.K. Bakshi. Mr. Sunil Sood. Thank you so much, sir.